Ah, here we go. Can you read that? That's good. Read it, I'll put it over here. It's been a while since I've done one of these recordings and you know, for the YouTube to really talk about my experience with gear, but I decided I wanted to do this. This setup comes with this really nice box. So these really nice, you know, controlled boxes. I'm pretty sure so I don't hit it. There's a nice pouch in here. There's an EF mount that was in the box. I thought that was a really nice touch. There's a lot of tools that come into this pouch, and it's just kind of like, look at all these things coming out of it. Adapters that you can put a lens support on rod support if you wanted to have a lens support on here. This comes with it. There are some shims that are inside this kit. Yeah, and extra screws. I guess if you lose a screw, there's like several extra screws in this particular kit. I'm gonna put the lenses back inside of their nice cushion that they're pre-cut out in these boxes to send back to Laowa or to the next person who's gonna utilize these. But yeah, really nice pouches that came in this. The boxes were a nice touch. I think they did a really good job with presentation for when you get your lenses. Respect to Laowa on that. You know, Laowa reached out to me. I'm very appreciative of them giving me the opportunity to play with these lenses. I know they're passing them around to different people to kind of check them out, especially those of us who are running around in the industry. I don't do the YouTube that often. I tried doing it for a little bit back, a while back, but anyways, regardless of that. So I wanted to come in here very quickly and just talk about my experience of bringing these on set, since that was my goal. I wanted to take these guys on a few shoots that I had coming up. These are the Laowa Nanomorphs. They come in a set of 4, if I remember reading. I received the 32, the 55, and the 85 millimeter Laowa Nanomorphs. So these are anamorphic for full frame or large format sensors, 32 by 24 sensors typically. And as you can see here, I have 2 full frame cameras here. I have my Sony FX9, and then over here I also have a Sony Venice. Thank you, Sony, for letting me play with it for a while, also for another shoot I had come up. And Keslow, I want to give that shout out real quickly for helping me kind of set the camera for use, since when you get cameras from manufacturers, you don't usually get everything you need to make it work. Like, it doesn't come with a cage, doesn't come with those pieces, and I tend to like to film with matte boxes and components that help our ACs and all the accessories that we usually put around cameras for, you know, the project we work on a narrative project. So it was nice of Keslow to give me the opportunity to come back and visit their facilities and help them build out the camera. I'm not a huge anamorphic user. I don't use anamorphics that often. I have used them here and there in the past. When I've shot on other cameras outside of the Sony ecosystem, like the RE cameras or any Reds that I've used here and there, when they've had the full open gate capabilities and anamorphic crop modes that built into the camera system. The Venice has that. The FX9 has a viewfinder preview of what that would look like. It doesn't actually have a mode for anamorphic, but I mean, you can fix those kind of things in your editing software, so that is something that we wanted to do for this one. When I took them out to these passion projects I was working on, because those are the ones that wanted to use it, my more, I guess, budget projects that I was on didn't care for doing anamorphic. We weren't filming for that. We weren't planned for it. We didn't do any of that stuff in our prep. So honestly, bringing those up for those projects would have just thrown off all of our pre-production. So I didn't use them on my bigger projects. But on my more passion projects and friends projects that had a little bit of money, or in general who just had something that came up and I had the opportunity to play with these, I decided to do that. And thankfully they allowed me, my production team and the producers on those projects have given me permission to be able to show you some of the frames that you're going to see here. I've used a few anamorphics in the past, you know, from rental houses, and they are quite heavier. These are quite nice and light, not too bad in terms of weight. So really geared towards those of you who like to film with a lighter rig. These 2 cameras, the way especially I have about my FX9 built, aren't exactly light, but I'm a big fan of heavy equipment and heavy gear. I've been in the industry long enough to really enjoy and respect and handle heavier gear, because I like the way that it makes you move a little bit smoother when you go handheld, for instance. You'll shoulder rig it out. There's a little bit of resistance on these on the rings, especially on the iris ring back here. We actually shot all of my projects wide open. They are at T2.9 on all 3 of these lenses. I like a little bit of resistance, only because, you know, when you're filming and you don't have motors on both of these, which they have standard 0.8 pitch rings built into the lenses. If you set it and you only have the focus ring set on a motorized electronic full fizz unit, or if you're on your own personal, not many people really put one on the iris. They usually just dial in what they want and they go from there. And when you do it that way, when the lens is too smooth almost, especially on these budget-friendly ones, these tend to move. And I've seen that on a few products and lenses of other manufacturers when being used a lot. All manufacturers, even on these budget-friendly side of lenses, tend to start off fairly stiff around the rings, and then they kind of get a little, as they get used often on set, they get thrown around, they get utilized on bigger crews and many different hands touching it from all the different ACs, from the seconds to firsts. Especially on indie projects, the first does it. A lot of camera operators in general will play with them and open them up and close them. When they start to get a little loose, sometimes they'll drift, and it hasn't happened a lot on a lot of lenses, and I've used a lot of the newer, I guess, budget aimed at lenses, and they've all done that. I'm not going to call anyone out, but that's basically what I've seen on different manufacturers, and they vary, because on the budget side, I believe that, or I find that it's probably more, they're kind of, how do I put it? They're not exactly going for like the value of how production, I guess, lensing on the larger expensive lenses usually go for, and their quality control. They do a decent job, all the different companies. I mean, it's nice to see these lenses are capable of giving you kind of these things, but there are things that can get kind of pushed forward or pushed a little fast, because, you know, they're not trying to spend a ton of money on R&D. They're not trying to spend a lot of money on ensuring that every nook and cranny is perfect on these lenses. So sometimes you'll see these budget ones start to drift. So going back to these guys, didn't have any issues with that. So I like the stiffness on here. The focus ring on all of them felt the same. We used every single one of these. I was very impressed of how wide the 32 really was. It's a 1.5 times anamorphic crop on a large format camera, which on these Sonys were, when you go through their catalyst browse system, was about a 1.3 D-squeeze. But surprisingly, I mean, we tried a 1.5, it looked a little odd, so the 1.3 seemed to be pretty nice. You know, I was very impressed with how the length of these. All of the rings are in the same spot for both the iris and for the focus on this, so if you have a rig and you're just swapping lenses, you're not having to move the fizz motor anywhere on these particular lenses, which is great. And so that makes it really easy to kind of swap between your different rigs, so whatever you're building and shooting with. The front element here, these caps are actually they're very nice. Got a nice good grab. They don't come off very easily, they stay on. Same goes with the PL adapter backing piece. It actually holds on really well. I have a set of budget-friendly lenses that I use for my indie projects, and these caps come off very easily on those, but this one stayed on really well. For anyone wondering, 77 millimeters for the screw inside, so that you would put a 77 millimeter ring if you're doing it that way. I use matte boxes with rods, so I don't ever think about that, but if you're wondering, that's what it is. And we had to put, obviously, a donut on our matte box, our swing away, to ensure it covered the lens so you don't get any back reflections, you know, any reflection you get from anyways. So it was a 82 donut around the outer part. One thing I noticed about these lenses, as we did a chart shot, which I don't have anything recorded on that. We didn't care about the chart shot. We cared about how it looked like when we were actually taking it on projects. So when we were filming, there were a couple of times we would set up a frame, and we chose a nice good wide frame to showcase these, and there'd be a little bit of bowing, which I know when it comes to anamorphic lenses that does tend to happen. So I noticed that it's pretty apparent. You can definitely see I don't know if exactly what they call it, but I guess pillowing, cushioning, whatever the word is being used these days. But anyways, there's a little bit of distortion on the top and the bottom and towards the edges of the actual lenses of your frame. And you'll see that on all three of the lenses, especially on the 32 being it so wide. But all three of them had that look. They have a more modern kind of look to them. They're not over stylistic. Flares are, again, they're kind of subdued, even though you get that nice anamorphic flare. That we did have a shot. I put a 1K in the corner of one of our shots, and we were doing a kind of a quickie outside shot for one of our scenes, and threw it together, shot at it, and made a nice streak, but it wasn't a crazy one, and I actually liked that. I sometimes don't like an overly dramatic streak, and that's very characteristic of most anamorphics is that kind of setup, and these are quite controlled, which is really nice. Something that just hit me, what I was very impressed with was close focus. We were impressed of how close we can get on these lenses. I enjoyed that a lot. We put the 32 and the 55 on quite often to do close wides, like wide close-ups, and our characters didn't distort how you would think like a wide lens, a spherical wide lens typically does when you do a close-up with a wide lens, how it distorts faces. These didn't distort them in an overly unnaturally way, I guess, put it that way. I was very impressed of how well we were able to get close to our characters and bring the story to the audience by bringing the camera closer to our character and really filling that frame with the beautiful imagery. I was looking at a couple of our scenes where we had close-ups with our actors, with the different actors we had filmed with, and to see how well it rendered, fall off from the light, how it hits you. I know there's a lot more variables when it comes to fall off, but when it comes to lenses, it's something I notice, like how lenses respect skin tones. And when you're looking at lensing in that way, you really start to, especially if you do like lens preps, if you go to a rental house and kind of play with all these lenses, I like to try to find someone who can come in and be our model from like two different skin tones, a dark skin tone and a lighter one. And hopefully if I do a lens test, I can do it with like an actor that's gonna be used on a project that I'm working on. But I didn't really do a lens test in that way with these guys. We just basically kind of cowboyed it since I was between a few projects. I said, you know what, I have these lenses, I want to give them a try. And we shot at, we pushed ourselves to the limit to use these fully for the different projects I was on. And yeah, I really liked what came out of it. Bokeh was, it had an interesting like triangular oval shaped to all of the bokeh. I was really paying attention. I finally got some of the frames from the editors and from the shoots we were on, where I was reviewing that and kind of looking over that, and I was like, oh, interesting shapes coming out of these lenses on that. It's a shape, but not in a shape that's distracting to your audience. You're really able to focus on your story on hand. They looked very controlled. We didn't have any issues with any time color changing or color fringing that you hear about some of these lenses, where it's like, is one of your lenses off on color? Didn't notice that. I noticed on the other side it did look nice, but it really opened up and rendered really nicely on the higher bit rate that the Venice offers on their system. The numbers were a little bit, they weren't perfectly accurate, I will say, on each side. When we were doing our ACs, we did a prep day for one of our projects, and we did take these out to the prep, and noticed that these markers weren't perfectly on the feet and meter side. It was nice to see both feet and meter on each side though. I did appreciate that. I really like the fact that the names are engraved into the metal and not just stamped on or written on. So if you get this lens, you'll definitely be appreciative that the lettering won't scratch off. It's very well made. It's made out of metal. Very solid components. We put them through their paces. We had a lot of people touching these, first and seconds, who kind of grabbed it, took it apart, put it back together, grabbed it, took it apart, picked it back together, and used them for different setup. I do find that when you take lensing or any kind of tools into a scripted, fairly decent sized team gear mix versus when you do things solo. I've done things solo, and you're a little bit more care friendly to your gear when you shoot, with like yourself, maybe 2 or 3 people, corporate shoots and solo documentaries, those kind of things. I find when you take these on a set as a DP, and I'm like, here's the lenses, here's the cameras, I'll be back. Let me see everything else that I typically do as a DP, the lighting, and sit down with the PD team and everything. These are getting handled by other people, other members of your team. And sometimes when you're doing more pages than you should be doing in a day, these lens swaps go much, much faster. And we need to be able to, rely on the products to be able to handle those quick switch arounds, those pass alongs and the passes between the ACs, and how they're connected to the cameras, how they come off the cameras, how they're able to be traveled and things like that, going between different locations, you can do unit moves. Those kind of things really put gear through some pretty intense tests. And since I'm still in the indie side of the narrative scripted industry, I find that end is even more test worthy for gear. It's nice to see manufacturers giving opportunities to different filmmakers who go out and actually use these products fully. And it was nice to actually, for me, to throw it at a project that was already pre-created for a different project that I had the opportunity in our minor prep for these short films to kind of include this into my prep mindset when I was putting it all together, versus just saying, hey, I got these lenses, let's just shoot something. So putting on a project that had a story and had a whole reason to shoot a project, and these were just a tool that we kind of brought on, was really a really fun way to really test what it can do. When I know I'm doing passion projects or lower budget projects, I tend to find myself wanting to test out new technology when it's provided, especially if manufacturers are happy to be like, sure, here, give this a try. And I just kind of put it into my workflow. And nothing really changes in prep, minus the fact that when I'm doing my framing, I have to first see when my frame's coming, like, oh, well, this lens gives me this framing, and we storyboarded for this idea, or had our shot list in this idea. And when you put an anamorphic lens in, you're like, interesting, let's go closer, because I forget how wide these geese create the frames, which I enjoyed. This particular set on a few projects I did work on with these, they opened my eyes to, maybe I should start shooting more anamorphic stuff for my projects, if I have the opportunity to do it. Yeah, so cool lenses. Thank you again, Laowa. I appreciate the opportunity. It was a lot of fun filming with these guys. I would do it again, honestly. If rental houses pick these up, I'd be happy to jump into renting these guys, for any of the projects that were smaller budget and, didn't have the budgets to go with the bigger, more popular anamorphic lenses. These worked out really well, and I enjoyed it. I think if you're looking at getting them, give them a try, for sure. Definitely test them out. You're not gonna be disappointed. Thank you again for watching. I hope I didn't bore you with anything on here, but hey, Nanomorph from Laowa, well done. Thank you so much, and have a great one. I hope I could do more of these gear tests to showcase to all of you and chat about it. It's been a while, and it's fun. I enjoy talking about it. So thanks a lot for watching. Take care.